last few weeks that I have gone out to check the mail at the post office, I've noticed that while things are still mostly green, if you look closely, there are pops of yellow and gold in the trees. It's not prevalent yet, but it means that fall is quickly approaching. While driving in the summer months, I noticed that the roads and the highways were lined with wildflowers, and it was so idyllic, almost like living in a fairy tale. But now that things are starting to cool off, those flowers are beginning to fade. They're still there, but not as prevalent as they were. And that means that if I plan on foraging anything from the property, I needed to get into gear. I have wild rhubarb growing all over the property. Though most of the plants are pretty immature and don't send up big stalks, anything worth harvesting. 2 plants are of fairly good size, but unfortunately one bolted early in this summer, and so that one wasn't good for harvesting. And the other one I should have harvested earlier, but I was still able to get quite a few stalks of it. I'm just going to go ahead and peel those, chop them up, and then I'll blanch those and then freeze them. Right now I can't use my wood stove, and so until I can, they'll go in the freezer and I'll use them for dessert later on. I also wanted to make sure that I got the last of the fireweed. I should have harvested fireweed blossoms a lot earlier in the summer, but I did get some. And to be honest with you, I really have so much jelly and jam right now that making fireweed jelly probably not really worth it right now. Again, also because I don't have propane, and even though I couldn't water bath can on the butane burner, it's not really the best thing to do. So I have another use for these fireweed blooms, and I'll share that with you coming up in the video. Let's talk about some of the things that I didn't harvest. I did not harvest mushrooms. I have mushrooms growing all over the property, but to be honest with you, I've never foraged for mushrooms before, and so I honestly don't feel comfortable doing it. I don't know which is a good mushroom and which is not. I don't know what's edible and what's toxic. I have a basic idea on a couple of them, but since I've not had any firsthand experience, I'm really intimidated by it. I have 2 mushrooms on the property that I believe are edible, but I would like to get a second opinion. So if you know if these are edible or what these might be, leave a comment down below. The first one, I believe that I have boletes growing on the property. And what distinguishes a bolete from other mushrooms is this big pillowy top that it has, the nice thick white stem underneath, and then on the bottom part of the cap of the mushroom, instead of showing gills, it shows pores. And if you bruise the pores and they turn blue, it's toxic and is not edible. Mine are turning more of a purpley color, and so I don't know if I should trust it or not. The other thing is I've not actually seen anybody ever cut into a bolete before, and so I don't know if when you do that, if they're supposed to have gills between those layers of pores and the meat of the mushroom. And so because of that, again, I don't trust these mushrooms, and I'm not going to eat them until I find somebody who tells me otherwise. And then I believe that I have portobello mushrooms on the property. These 2 mushrooms I just found, and to be honest with you, they remind me of cremini or portobello mushrooms. If you've ever taken a dry brush or a paper towel to a cremini mushroom and you notice that it starts to peel up in feather-like sections, that's what this looks like. I could be wrong. This could be something entirely different. But if those turned out to be portobello, that would be fantastic. And if these other ones are king boletes, that would be fantastic too. But I don't honestly know. Yesterday, a bird flew into one of the windows of the cabin and he broke his neck. And he died instantly, I'm sure, because by the time I made it around the cabin to where he was already gone. But I picked him up and I carried him and I took him into the forest, and there was a patch of fireweed that I laid him in. But then this morning when I woke up, he was back. Not Pet Cemetery back, but close enough. So something had picked him up and brought him and dropped him off on my doorstep. I can only think that it was possibly an ermine or maybe another bird or something that just accidentally dropped him and it just happened to be at the doorstep. I tried looking on the security cameras, footage, but there's so many events that happen overnight that I wasn't able to find the event that showed it. So who knows what happened, but either way, I need to do something to protect the birds so that this doesn't happen again. So when the curtains are open, the windows are acting like a mirror, reflecting back the forest or the mountain view, and birds and dragonflies are just crashing into the window because to them it just looks like an opening in the wall that they can fly through. So my immediate plan is to break up that reflection by creating a grid on the window using a yellow highlighter and a ruler. On Amazon, I have seen some reflective, glittery type translucent stickers that are meant to go on windows. My only concern with applying those to the windows is that I'm not a fan of stickers, and I'm afraid that they won't hold up in the sunlight or in the elements, especially as the temperatures freeze and then thaw. And once a sticker has begun to deteriorate, it's a pain to get it off of a window. I also don't want anything to break up my line of sight out the window. And so that's why I'm going to use the ruler and a yellow highlighter to create this grid. I can see it from inside, but it's not as distracting as I believe the sticker would be, but it's enough that it'll break up that view for the birds, and I have heard of other people doing this with some success. Then in the spring, I'll be building some planter boxes to put at the base of the windows with some plants in it and some bunting or some reflective metal strips that will hang at the top of the window. I've seen the metal strips used in gardens before to deter birds, and they work quite well. So I'm hoping that these two things will at least break up that view so that the birds are deterred or slowed down and they don't crash into the windows. I have received so many thoughtful gifts this week that it is almost overwhelming. And it's amazing how well you guys get me. Like these from Kim. This is so me. Like this little plaque is so me. And so is this, especially the other side of it. I came, I saw, I forgot what I was doing. That's totally me. And some of these things are so aptly timed that I am just amazed at your generosity and your thoughtfulness. Such as this tripod. I needed a new tripod because I broke mine. And also these light bulbs. Can never have too many of those. But what's really most aptly timed is this furnace cement. Now I can fix my wood stove and be able to cook on it again. Yay! And then on top of that, another thoughtful letter from Janice. Thank you again, Janice. I really appreciate it. This book, One Man's Wilderness. Thank you. And I know I need to get on Instagram. I apologize that I have been slacking on Instagram lately, but I'll get there. And sometimes heroes send capes. They don't just wear them. So thank you, Dee Dee, for all these things for my contractor's son, including this fabulous sticker book. This is going to provide him with hours of entertainment, I'm sure. Look at all those stickers. What kid wouldn't love this? But I have to say that I'm also amazed at the talents that you guys have. These must have taken forever to do, and I do not possess any artistic talent, so I am completely blown away by these. Dee Dee, these are fabulous. All of this is fabulous. So thank you, everyone, for your generosity and for your kind and thoughtful gifts. I really appreciate every one of you. In the fall, one of my go-to drinks is tea, and especially the tea that I'm going to show you today. So this is not just because I'm living in Alaska and because I can. This is actually one of the things that I use to keep my immune system bolstered in the winter months. And that is by making rosehip tea. To process my rosehips, it's very easy, especially these ones. These ones are incredibly soft, but if they're not, you can do this with a knife just as well. It just takes a long time. All I'm gonna do is pull off that bloom end, and then my preferred method is to just squeeze out the inner contents of the rosehip. It's very sticky, but this portion that comes out, I don't know if you can see that, but it's just fibrous hairs and then full of a bunch of little seeds that are inedible. And I'm going to just keep the rind for the tea, and I'm going to discard the seeds and that fibrous pulp. There are those that say, you know, you don't need to do this, that you can actually just grind these up in a food processor and make a mash out of them. I don't recommend doing it because roses are related to apples, and apple seeds contain cyanide. And if you were to eat enough apple seeds, you could actually poison yourself. So I'm not going to risk it. I'm a scaredy cat, I guess. And I err on the side of caution. So I'm going to discard that inner pulp, and I just want the rind left. And I have already processed a bunch of these. And since I'm just doing this for myself, I'm not doing a whole lot. I'm basically going to take about a half a cup of rose rinds, and I'm just gonna add them to a pot of boiling water. And I'm gonna let these steep in the boiling water for approximately 20 minutes. You can do it longer, you can even leave it overnight. You know, take it off the heat, of course, and leave it overnight. The longer you let the rose hips sit in the hot water, the more beneficial elements you're going to be able to extract from those rose hips. Now, I personally find 20 minutes is long enough. And so after 20 minutes, I'm going to take it off the heat and I'm going to let it cool down slightly. And then I'm just going to go ahead and strain out all the rose hip pulp and be left with just the juices of the roses. Now, traditionally, I would do this through either some cheesecloth or through a coffee filter. And my coffee filter that I have, you know, the little drip through thing, it gets used every day. And so it is going to wind up imparting a coffee taste to it. So I'm not going to use that. I have a cup of hot water with some green tea added to it. I'm just going to let that steep for a minute. I don't want to let it steep too long. The longer you let tea steep, the more bitter it becomes because of the amount of tannins in the tea. So just go ahead and pull that out, set that aside. I'm just going to add in a spoonful of juice from the rose hips. The juice that I extracted from the rose hips is very concentrated, so you do not want to use a whole bunch of this. And stick around at the end of this video to see an outtake of what happens if you do put too much of this in your tea. You just really want 1 teaspoon of this per cup. If you're making a larger amount, the ratio would be 1 cup to 2 liters of water. Typically, I would use honey to sweeten my tea, which, by the way, for those of you that were wondering what this is raw honey. This is not ghee. This is actually raw honey that I received. It has just started to crystallize because it's always kept cold in the cabin. And this was honey that I received from my neighbors back in Colorado as probably a parting gift or a thank you for moving out of the neighborhood. I had very wonderful neighbors in Colorado who I miss dearly, but this was a gift from my neighbors back in Colorado. So if you're watching, thank you, Juanita. So instead of sweetening it with the honey, I am actually going to use some simple syrup that I made using the fireweed blossoms. And this is very easy to make. It is literally just equal parts of white sugar and water. And you boil it down until those sugar dissolves. And then I just threw in the fireweed blossoms and let it steep for about a minute. Pulled it off the heat. And then I'm just simply going to go ahead and strain that and pour it into a jar where it will keep for about a month's time if stored in the refrigerator. And I'm going to add actually 2 teaspoons of this to my tea. And then I have one more secret ingredient. So as I mentioned, I'm doing this as an antioxidant immune booster. The rose hips contain vitamin C as well as many antioxidants. The fireweed also contains many antioxidants. But my secret ingredient is elderberry syrup. And you can use elderberry syrup almost daily, I believe. I have never heard of anybody saying not to, but use at your own risk. And remember, anything I say here is not to replace any medical advice. This is all anecdotal home remedies. This is my go-to drink whenever I feel like I'm getting the sniffles, or if I've been around somebody who has a cold. This is the first thing that I run to. And for me, it's done wonders. So that this is a delightful tea all in of itself, but with the added benefits, you can't go wrong with this tea. So I'm going to enjoy this real quick. But I want to thank everybody for joining me today. Thank you again for all your gifts. And for those of you who are here in Alaska and have been hit with all the rains lately, my heart goes out to you, and I hope that everybody is okay. And to all of you, please stay safe and take care. I'll see you again next time. To make the rosehip tea, you're going to pour the juice of the rose hips directly into your cup. No, you're not. That is not right. Don't do that. You will be sadly disappointed. Yeah, that's not right.
And action.
All right, let's try this again. I'm just going to add a couple spoonfuls of the rosehip juice to my tea. And then I'm simply going to enjoy my cup of tea. Nope. Nope, I'm not. Definitely don't add 2 teaspoons of rose juice into your tea. And don't pour all the juice in there either. All right, we're going to have to try that a third time because I'm not thinking.